Community Viewpoint.
Good afternoon and welcome once again to Community Viewpoint. As always, I'm your host, John Pawlak. As many of you know, one of our Pahrump residents lost his life a couple of weeks ago from burns he sustained while using oxygen. I contacted a healthcare company, Vitus Healthcare, who have a safety video pertaining to how to safely use oxygen in your homes, our homes. The video will take up the rest of our time on this segment, so I will sign off now. And we send our sincere condolences to his family. And I thank you for watching. This is an important video, so roll the tape, please.
Now that you're using oxygen in your home, there may be some changes to your lifestyle. We want to assure you that the oxygen is safe to use, but only in the right conditions. To avoid accidents, it's important to understand the potential dangers of oxygen in your home. Oxygen is oftentimes not taken seriously, as many believe that oxygen is just air. Oxygen itself is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. It makes up about 21% of the air we breathe. While oxygen itself does not burn, it helps things burn faster and hotter. The air we breathe contains about 21% oxygen. The oxygen in an oxygen cylinder, such as the knee cylinder we have here, has the purity level of 99% or greater. Any concentration of oxygen greater than 23.5% causes materials in your home to ignite much more easily. Oxygen lowers the temperature at which everyday household objects will start to burn. This can include your bedding, clothing, carpets, draperies, and even hair. It does not matter if the oxygen is from an oxygen cylinder, oxygen concentrator, or a liquid oxygen reservoir. Oxygen from any of these sources is above the 23.5% that will make most materials ignite at very low temperatures, burn quickly, and twice as hot of a normal fire. We would like to provide you with a few demonstrations on the dangers of oxygen. Please do not attempt these demonstrations, as they can be very dangerous and cause severe injury. This is how a cigarette burns in the air we currently are breathing. Now let's see what happens to the cigarette and how it burns when we introduce medical-grade oxygen. Notice that the cigarette is burning much more quickly. It's burning much faster and hotter than it was on room air that we breathe. You may have noticed a white-hot flame that indicates a flame temperature measured in thousands of degrees Fahrenheit. Next, we would like to show you how an article of clothing will burn in a normal environment. Notice that the article of clothing does not catch on fire very quickly. Now let's saturate a piece of clothing with some oxygen and see what happens. Please note the piece of clothing will be above the 23.5% oxygen purity level. We're actually using a metal pan to simulate the skin of a patient during this presentation. Please notice how much more rapidly the patient's skin as well as clothing would catch on fire with oxygen used while smoking with oxygen in place. We've made a pipe cleaner man that we will presume to be a patient. The patient, like many other patients, who continues to smoke with oxygen in use, as he is convinced that smoking with oxygen cannot be dangerous. In fact, our patient continues to smoke in bed. When he decides he wants to have a cigarette, he takes off his cannula and lays it next to him in the bed. Our patient thinks that oxygen is just air and cannot hurt him. In this case, our patient is wrong, terribly wrong. Let's place our patient in this glass jar so we can simulate saturating the patient's clothing with oxygen. The covering of the pipe cleaner will be his clothing. let's see what happens when an ember is introduced from one of his cigarettes. The fire was very impressive. However, the fire you just saw was far hotter than a normal oxygen fire. Oxygen-enriched fires burn between 1,500 and 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or even more depending on the materials involved. This much heat will cause serious injuries, which are almost always life-threatening. Sadly, this does happen in real life. Our patients have been injured, and some even killed by fires caused by the misuse of oxygen. I want so badly to prevent that from happening, and it's why I'm here right now talking to you. Here's a real-life story from a patient who was smoking while using oxygen. He agreed to talk with us on camera to try to keep this from happening to somebody else.
I guess I wasn't thinking right, and I was smoking with the oxygen on, and I fell asleep, and I woke up to a big blaze in my face. Ended up burning myself all over different parts of my body, and my nose real good, my lip a little bit. I was in a lot of pain. My wife and my daughter put out the fire and stuff and put me out and called the ambulance, and I ended up rolling around on the floor in pain. I knew that you don't wear oxygen when you smoke, and I thought I was a smart enough individual that I would never do it and get burned up. I just thought I was smart enough, and I knew it wouldn't happen to me, but it did. Well, before, I used to just take this off, and I wouldn't even turn that off because I didn't think I needed to. And I would just, as long as this was away from me, I thought that was good enough. And I would just take this and throw it on the floor, make sure it was a good distance from me, and I'd smoke. Now, of course, I know that's not even good enough. When I want to smoke now, first thing I do is ask somebody to turn the machine off. And once they've turned it off, I sit this down on the floor, and then I get a cigarette and I light it. And then once I'm done with it and I put it out and it's totally out in the ashtray, then I get this and I ask somebody to turn it back on.
Now let's go over some important points to remember so you can safely use oxygen in your home. When using or storing oxygen, keep oxygen at least 10 feet away from open flames and other sources of heat. Oxygen cylinders and tubing require the same consideration. Remember, electric appliances like toasters, space heaters, hair dryers, electric blankets, and electric razors have the potential to overheat and may spark when in use. Never smoke or allow smoking around any oxygen source or its tubing. Don't use flammable materials near oxygen. Hair and aerosol sprays, paints, and thinners can all pose risk. Even certain petroleum products like Vaseline and VapoRub can pose a danger. A spark can quickly ignite these type of products, increasing the risk of fire and severe burns. Keep oxygen tanks and tubing in well-ventilated areas because oxygen tends to build up in the surrounding air and concentrate in clothes, bedding, and curtains. Never store oxygen cylinders in a closed area, to include in closets or under a bed. Here's how to safely use the valve on an oxygen cylinder. All oxygen cylinder valves must be opened slowly and completely, like this. If you open it too quickly, heat is generated, and it's called the heat of recompression. There's enough heat to ignite anything that is present inside of the valve or regulator, including dust, What essentially happens is you are creating an oxygen-enriched fire inside of the oxygen regulator and the valve. So remember to always open the valve slowly and completely. Additionally, never use any type of lubricant or oils on the oxygen cylinders or regulators. One hazard of oxygen is the vast amount of energy that is stored in a full or partially full oxygen cylinder. All oxygen cylinders should be considered as sleeping giants. If a large cylinder such as an H cylinder or M cylinder is seen here, were to accidentally fall over, the valve could break off and the cylinder could accelerate up to 40 miles per hour in just a half a second. These large cylinders have enough energy in them to go through 2 cinder block walls. All oxygen cylinders should always be secured. This could be either in a rack or in a stand to prevent them from falling over. This is exactly why we tell our patients to never store oxygen cylinders in the trunk of their cars. Should you be involved in a rear-end collision with oxygen cylinders in the trunk, the valve could be sheared off, causing the cylinder to hurt you and even those outside of your car. Because oxygen tanks have so much energy and pressure inside, it's important to take great caution when traveling with them in a car. Secure your oxygen cylinders in the back passenger area of your vehicle. Don't let a cylinder roll or bang around. And never keep an oxygen cylinder in the trunk. Your vehicle should be well ventilated. Leave the window slightly cracked open to prevent oxygen and hot temperatures from building up inside. Here's an oxygen safety summary and a few more tips. Always follow these precautionary measures for the safety of your family and yourself. Never smoke while using oxygen. Warn visitors not to smoke near you when you are using oxygen. Not following these measures could result in severe injuries, total destruction of your home, and even death. Smoking while using oxygen not only endangers your life, but those who live in the home with you and people around you. No smoking sign should be placed on your home's main entrance. Firefighters, emergency personnel, and visitors need to know that oxygen is being used in your home. For oxygen concentrators, use a properly grounded wall outlet. Do not place the electrical cord or oxygen tubing under rugs, carpets, blankets, cushions, or furniture. Keep an all-purpose fire extinguisher nearby and make sure you know how to use it. Have working smoke detectors on hand and check them monthly. Oxygen is a great benefit for patients who need oxygen therapy. However, it should always be handled with caution. Thank you.